If you think you can't do keto or low carb because you think you're going to miss bread too much, guess what? Today's video is for you. Welcome to Pop Keto, where we aim to help you live a sustainable keto and low carb lifestyle. So it's still, well, by the time we're posting this, it's still January. Let's call it the beginning of the year. So if you've just started living the keto lifestyle and a keto way of eating, welcome. We hope you're enjoying it. There is so much good food to discover and to enjoy. So you've probably worked out through your research, there's a few things that you don't eat when you're eating keto. So things like potato and pasta and bread, rice, they're probably some of the most notable ones. But a lot of people find that as a hurdle to being able to join in this way of eating. So today we are showing you possibly the best low carb bread recipe that we found so far. All right, so I want to get a couple of quick things out of the way first. First of all, this is not our recipe. Now we do have some tips for you when baking this recipe on how to do it for yourself, but this is not our recipe. This belongs to a lady called Diedre who runs a YouTube channel called Diedre's Kitchen, and we're going to put a link to Diedre down below. Now, because this is not our recipe, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tell you what the ingredients are, but we're not going to tell you how much. We'd really encourage you to go over to Diedre's channel to have a look at the recipes for yourself. She's got both a bread maker version and an oven version. So go over to Diedre's channel, give her video a like, put some supportive comments on there because this is a really, really great recipe. We're just showing you that it exists in case you didn't know. Second thing you need to know about this recipe is that it's probably not going to be suitable, well, it's not going to be suitable for you if you are celiac or if you are gluten intolerant or even if you're just avoiding gluten in your diet. Now the reason for that is one of the big ingredients is actually vital wheat gluten. So that's obviously going to cause you problems if that's something you can't have. But we're going to talk about that and a couple other ingredients that we have here as we go along, just because there are a couple of weird things in this, like honey, but there is an explanation for it. All right, so let's get to it. I am using a bread maker today. So we are doing the bread maker version of Diedre's recipe. All right, so here is my very first tip for this recipe. When you start cooking this for yourself, the first time that you do it, use a scale. Use a scale and measure the ingredients, taking note of them yourself. That way, next time you need to do it, you can pop your bread maker bin straight on a scale and you just throw it all into the one pan. Pretty easy. All right, so let's get into today's cook. We are starting with some water. So for your water, make sure it is at room temperature. Now, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and you're using water straight out of a tap, if it's cold water in the middle of winter, that's not gonna do it for you. You don't want that to happen. You want your water at around, you probably wouldn't want your water much colder than 20 degrees. My bread maker actually has a function where it's going to warm it up a little bit more anyway, but we just want to avoid shocking the yeast that we're going to use a little bit later on. So water. Next, we're dealing with the rest of our wet ingredients. So we're going to add some egg, give that a bit of a stir. All right, so now we get to our first ingredient, which is a little bit of a surprise, and it is honey. Now, the reason it's a surprise is because honey is obviously sweet. One of the things it does have a lot of in it is sugar. So why would we be adding that to a low carb bread recipe? Well, the answer is yeast. We're using yeast as a raising agent in this recipe. And so as the yeast does its thing, it needs some sugar to be able to feed on to create the carbon dioxide, which makes the dough rise. And so to feed the yeast, we are going to give them some honey. I'm using some organic honey. And again, we're just gonna pop it straight into the tin. And again, a quick stir. So that's it for our wet ingredients. Let's move on to the dry. So the rest of the ingredients, we're just gonna whack straight into the middle of the pan, basically creating a big pile in the center. There's a couple that we need to do a little bit differently, but let's go. So next is linseed or flaxseed meal. Next ingredient that we're putting in is oat fiber. Now this is different to ground oats or anything like that. It is actually oat fiber. It's a little bit hard to get at times here in the UK. So when we do see it, we grab a couple of packs, but oat fiber, that's the next ingredient. All right, so next is the vital wheat gluten. Now, what vital wheat gluten is, it's taking wheat and putting it through a process where all of the carbs are washed out of it, and we're left with the gluten, which is a protein. And the protein from that is what's going to give it a really nice texture. Honestly, you're going to be surprised when you see what this looks like. If you're used to that dense sort of looking low carb bread, this is going to be awesome. So we're putting this in, and we're putting in quite a bit. Next ingredient we're adding to the pile is some powdered erythritol. Now, if you already have erythritol, but just the normal sort of crystallized version, that was pretty close there to going over, but I am all right. If you already have erythritol, but you don't have powdered erythritol, the way we get powdered erythritol is just to put it in like a little spice grinder for a little bit. It only takes like 7 or 8 seconds, done. And if we do get low, we run a whole bulk load of it through, so that if we need it, we can just do it anytime. Next, we're adding some salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt, and I'm just gonna sprinkle that around the edges. I don't even know if this is necessary. It just works for me. Next, we have some softened butter, and I'm just gonna pop them in around the edges as well. Now, softened butter, it doesn't need to be too melted depending on your bread maker. I guess if you are doing this in a bread maker, it's worth referring to the manual of your bread maker to make sure that you are making your bread the way your bread maker needs you to. Just 2 more ingredients now. Now, this one is xanthan gum. This is often something that we use when we're thickening a sauce or something like that, if we want to get something to get a little bit of a gel going. Now, xanthan can tend to clump, so what we're going to do is we're just going to sprinkle it lightly over all the dry ingredients, trying to get a light, even-ish sort of coverage. And our last ingredient is the yeast. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a little bit of a reservoir at the top of our mountain here. And we are going to put our yeast right in there. So that is it for the ingredients then. Now we are going to put this in our bread maker on its default cycle, which I know works for this. So have a look for something similar on your bread maker. Now, if you don't have a bread maker, like I said, Diedre does have a version of this for the oven. But if you want to look at a bread maker, they're pretty easy to get your hands on these days, whether it's a cheap secondhand one off something like Facebook Marketplace, but even new, there's relatively cheap ones compared to more expensive ones. We've got a cheap one. So I'm going to pop this into our bread maker here for its setting. It takes around 3 hours. We'll be back after that. Okay, it's been a few hours now, but we have this lovely looking loaf here. Listen, it sounds like bread. It smells like bread. It looks like bread. I'm so excited to show you guys this. Let's have a look. So we're going to cut it open. And look at that. Beautiful, beautiful consistency. It looks just like wholemeal bread that you'd buy at the supermarket. Amazing. And you can do so much with this once you've got it. It's bread, you know, you can turn it into sandwiches, you can turn it into French toast. I wonder if you can do bread pudding. I haven't tried that one, but you know, that's once you've got this down, there's so much you can do. So I'm just gonna try this with a little bit of butter. This is still nice and warm. You can see the butter's just melting. Cheers. Guys, it's low carb and it's bread. It's exactly what you want. I mean, the crust is always a bit chewy, but that's what you get on bread. So there you have it. That is a beautiful bread recipe from Diedre at Diedre's Kitchen. We're going to put a link to her channel down below, specifically to the video for bread. But as I said, the reason for this video is that bread seems to be something that people really want and miss on the keto diet, and this is probably one of the best and closest to carby bread recipes that we have found so far. So I want to say thank you if you've watched this far. Don't forget to show Diedre some love as well when you go to her channel. Give her channel some likes, leave a comment telling how much you appreciate this recipe, because I know I do. Stay happy, stay healthy, and we will see you next time. Bye.